and we'll continue to discuss political institutions and policy making today. And the basic decision rules of political systems differ along three important dimensions, and we have already discussed the first two. The first one was geographic distribution of authority between the central government and lower levels such as states, provinces, or municipalities. Second, the separation of powers. Namely, we discussed the differences among presidential system, parliamentary system, and semi-presidential system. And the third dimension is the limitations on government authority. And today we'll discuss the third dimension, the limitations on government powers. And unlike authoritarian regimes, democracies are characterized by some legal or customary limitation on the exercise of power. So the government cannot wield unlimited power in democracies. Systems in which the powers of various government units are defined and limited by a written constitution, statutes, and customs are called constitutional regimes. So in these countries, usually what government can and cannot do are specified in the law or in customs. And in constitutional regimes, civil rights, such as the right to a fair trial and freedom to speak, petition, publish, and assemble, are protected against government interference, except under specified circumstances. And these circumstances are usually, say, when national security is at stake, at the time of war, etc. But these circumstances must be specified in the law or by law. So who can limit the government power? We are talking about limitations on government power. And among governmental institutions, which can, in your opinion, limit the power of government itself? Which branch? The courts, right? So the courts are crucial to the limitations on government power. Well, there are countries in which the government's power to coerce citizens is relatively unlimited by the courts. So countries with very weak court system. And most of the authoritarian government, including China, fall onto this category. Anyway, in these type of systems, government powers are unlimited by the courts. Some constitutional regimes have independent courts that protect citizens against the improper implementation of laws and regulations, but cannot legally overrule the assembly or the political executive, as in Britain. So yes, the court tries to protect the rights and freedoms of the citizens. However, the court does not have power to overrule the legislative branch or executive branch. So these are countries that accept the superiority of executive branch or legislative branch over the judicial branch. Okay. And finally, there are countries in which the courts not only protect the rights of citizens, but also police other parts of the government to see that their powers are properly exercised. So this is presumably truly independent courts, and they protect their citizens and they watchdog on their government institutions. The United States is an example of system in which high courts rule effectively on challenges that the government has exceeded the powers allocated by the Constitution. Now, I'm sure that you have heard of the term constitutionality. So when the law does something that violates Constitution, then the Supreme Court of the U.S. declares that the law is unconstitutional, and the law becomes null. And this practice is called judicial review. Okay? The U.S. is not the only country with judicial review. So that's the U.S. Supreme Court. Germany has judicial review. France has judicial review. Japan has judicial review too. Although Japan does have judicial review, Japanese court tend to go along with the legislative branch and the executive branch, i.e. the cabinet. And at least on paper, Russians have judicial review too. How about us? How about Korea? Do we have judicial review? Yes? Not by the Supreme Court, but by the Constitutional Court. This must be the entrance to the Constitutional Court, right? 헌법재판소. So once again, the third dimension of political institutions, limitations on the government power, can be exercised primarily by the courts. And we need to have strong, independent court system. Okay, up until now, we have discussed many different dimensions of political institutions. Then maybe we are ready to ask this question.